How's everything going? We are just going to jump right back into these asks. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I am, thank you. I can't wait for season 3 and all the symbolism it holds because I'm now certain that our girl Beth will return. Yay! But I have an important question. I hope you take your time to analyze it because I love hearing it. Do you think that after the Bethyl reunion, we will get a kiss between Daryl and Beth, or will it be postponed until they get used to each other like before? So, I mean, obviously, we don't know for sure. I think so, based on, I don't know if you asked this before or after the most recent episode of Dead City came out, but I'm actually recording these all at the same time, so you wouldn't have heard my analysis yet. I do think that we have pretty good evidence now that Beth is going to have some uh, memory issues. So I think when they kiss and how fast the relationship, I 100% to answer your question, do think we're going to get a kiss. I think we're actually very likely to get a sex scene eventually. So yes and yes, but how long it takes and when it happens is probably going to depend on her memory. Obviously, she's not going to want to kiss him if she doesn't know who he is. Um, I can see it being something where I think it's going to be so juicy, and I hope they do a good job with it. I'm sure they will, but I can just see something, all kinds of headcanons going on now where she sees him and she kind of recognizes him, but she doesn't know who he is. Like immediately when she sees him, it's going to start jogging some memories for her. And maybe even seeing Carol too. If she saw Carol, anybody from the group, I think it would do something, right? It would have some kind of impact on her. But still, even if she's getting some flashes of memories, even if she kind of recognizes him, that doesn't mean she's going to have her whole memory back. And she may not trust him at first. I mean, it's going to be really jarring, and you're going to feel really discombobulated if somebody walks up and says, oh yeah, I used to know you. We knew each other for like 5 years, and also I knew your dad and I know your sister, and it's like, what? So it's going to be rough for her, but I think as soon as her memory comes back, then it's going to seem like they're just picking up wherever they left off. But her memory has to come back first. Otherwise, she can't pick up where they left off. So that would be my answer. It's just going to depend on the storyline they go with and how long it takes. And, of course, we all hope it won't take that long. It'll just take an episode or two, and then all of her memories will come back. But I don't know exactly what they're planning for that. So I think it will depend on the memories. And I guess you could call that it being postponed until they get used to each other again. I mean, I think that would have always been the case. When you haven't seen someone for 10 or 11 years, at their core, they're probably who they always were, but they can also be very different. I mean, even if you think about some of the characters that have left and come back, not necessarily died, but you had Morales, who came back and was with Negan and tried to kill Rick, right? And Rick was trying to go, no, we were together at the beginning, like that should count for something. We were friends, and Morales didn't care. He was just with the Saviors. And then Daryl killed him, and even Rick was saying to Daryl, do you realize who that was who you just killed? And Daryl didn't care, right? That was when Daryl was going through his somewhat murderous mindset during all that war. But anyway, and then you have people like Morgan, and I think most people expected that when Rick and Morgan came back together, there would be this instant bond. And there was in some ways. I mean, certainly there's history there, but they didn't always 100% trust each other either. They felt like it's been a long time and we're not as loyal to each other because we haven't seen each other in a long time. We've had different experiences. We're with different people who we're loyal to. And so, you might have a different agenda than me. And that's just normal. That's just natural when you are apart from someone and come back together. And people always talk about how, maybe you don't see one another for years and then you come back together and it's like, we never even left. And I have that, I think I've said before, with some of my high school friends, but it's still a little different. Number one, we're not in Walking Dead world where we're always fighting zombies and losing people all the time and all of that. And me and my friends stay up to date with each other on Facebook and see each other like once every 3 to 6 months, right? It's not quite the same thing as going 10 years in zombie land. But you get the idea. So I think either way, they would have to get to the point where they knew each other a little bit before a relationship could occur. But I also don't think it's going to take very long. It's not like, oh, we're going to need 7 months. No, we're going to need like a week or two, and then fight some zombies together, and then we'll be good. So anyway, I'm rambling, but that would be my take on that. I think it's gonna have to do with her memories. It's gonna have to do with what's going on in the storyline, because we all know that The Walking Dead can really drag things out. And in the story, it really might only be a week, but for us, it's like 2.5 years, you know? So hopefully they don't make us wait too long, but I'm sure they will milk it as best they can. So thank you for the ask. Oh, look, I think it's a hater post here. I didn't read through these before I started doing this. What will it take for you to believe Beth is gone? I used to be TD, but it's been almost 11 years and the spinoffs are flopping. The golden years of TWD are long over. Well, as I've said before, I will believe Beth is gone. Number one, if the whole TWD universe ends in some way and she doesn't come back, if they kill off Daryl and she never came back, or if they genuinely put him with someone else and say that he is that person is his soulmate and it's not Beth. One of those things will make me shut up about her return, but until that happens, yeah, I'm not shutting up. So, and we are watching the template for season 5 play out. And I don't think I agree that the spinoffs are flopping. They're definitely not as popular as the flagship show. I will give you that. But especially the Daryl Dixon spinoff, it's in at certain times it's had better numbers than the flagship show did. So I think you don't hear about it as much. It's not quite the same thing as when the flagship show was going and everybody had to tune in at the same time when it was on at 7 p.m. on Sunday or whatever time it was on for you, depending on the time zone. Um, because then you had 20 million people watching it all at the same time. And now people are not watching it at the same time because it's streaming. People watch it whenever, when a new episode comes out, like within a few days. But I usually get up and watch it early in the morning. But if I'm busy, then I can watch it when I get home. And so people are watching it at different times. So the numbers are calculated differently. I will say that Dead City, I know, is not doing as well. I don't think The World Beyond did as well. I know Fear never did quite as well as the main spinoff, but I know that The Ones Who Live did well. Why? Because of the romance. That's why. And Daryl Dixon does well because it's Norman. So, and if they bring a love interest on for him, I mean, honestly, a lot of the reason it probably did so well the first 2 seasons is because of Isabel. And even though a lot of people didn't like her and didn't want him to be with her, it's the shipping wars, right? People are wanting to see if they're going to actually give him a love interest. And certainly, if Beth shows up, you're going to get a lot of people who haven't watched the show in a long time tuning in. So I don't think I agree that they're flopping. They may not always do as well as the flagship, in the sense. So in that sense, they're less popular, but that's not the same thing as flopping. So anyway, thank you for your ask. Moving on. Okay, this is my last one, it looks like, for right now. So I was seeing on YouTube recently some speculation that Dwight might be coming back. It made me wonder if that's the case. Could Beth's return somehow be tied in with him? I'm not sure that I believe that's how she would return, but it did get me thinking. I haven't watched the dark era of TWD in a long time, seasons 5 through 7, but I do seem to recall feeling like they were paralleling Dwight with Daryl a lot, and that Dwight's relationship with Sherry, was it? I can't remember, had a lot of undertones of Beth and Daryl. I'd really have to force myself to go back and watch seasons 6 and 7, though, to truly delve into this, and I don't know if I can stomach that, though, lol. Could this be an alternative path to Beth's return in some way? The answer is it definitely could be. There's always been speculation that she might return in a different show. And to an extent, it would make sense, like if they had her show up in a different spinoff, and that way the audience knew she was alive, but Daryl didn't. That would be interesting. And in the past, I've said, yeah, I could see them doing that. It's a possibility. Now, the longer that we've watched, I just don't think that it's very plausible that she's going to show up anywhere except in Daryl's spinoff. It just wouldn't make any sense for them to do an entire spinoff about him finding his true love and then have her show up somewhere else. To me, that just doesn't. If they were going to do that, I think they would have shown her before they started the spinoff. Um, I feel like it's too late for them to use that tactic. That's all. So it's always possible she could show up in conjunction with someone else. And it's always possible that she will anyway, but it will be in the Daryl Dixon spinoff. So it would be crazy if she showed up and Dwight happened to be where she was or something. I mean, what are the chances Dwight is wherever, France or Spain or, wherever they end up finding her. But I did like the ask that I answered a couple of videos ago about Rome. That would be super cool if Carol's kidnapped, taken to Rome. Beth is in charge of the community that has her in Dawn's role, and therefore he actually did find the wolf in Rome. Like, that would be awesome, actually. But we don't know that that's the case. That could be just us having headcanons, right? Anyway, so it's very possible, but you are right that there was a lot of parallels between Dwight and Daryl, and Sherry obviously would have been the stand-in for Beth. And I mean, it was quite obvious the way that they were paralleling Dwight and Daryl because Dwight even took Daryl's bike and his vest and wore them around. So it was very obvious that that was a parallel going on. Um, Sherry, who would have represented Beth, helped Daryl escape and helped him emotionally in a lot of ways. And then she took off. Sherry did, I mean. And so she and Dwight were separated. Now, if you didn't watch Fear the Walking Dead, then you never saw their reunion. But interestingly, there was a lot of parallels even in the reunion because they were far apart. And then he eventually found her and they hugged and they kissed and it was a really sweet reunion. And the thing is, he heard her voice it wasn't on the radio, but it was on a walkie-talkie. So he heard her audibly and went, whoa, 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 that's Sherry, that's my wife. And then he went and found her. And because it was a walkie-talkie, the range was small. She wasn't that far away. She was actually like just outside the building he was in. So yeah, there were definitely a lot of parallels there. So what you're seeing is definitely true. But we've also seen this a lot of other ways. So I wouldn't go so far as to say because those parallels were there, that means she's going to return with Dwight, because we've seen parallels with 100 other characters. And I just always think that they are, I've said this before too. It's not even just that they're all pointing to Beth. I know that that's kind of what I say and what we all say, because that's just the way that we explain it, because we're looking for Beth and Daryl's storyline. But I think that these are stories they tell over and over again with many characters, because a lot of what The Walking Dead, what their themes are to split people up and then bring them back together, right? It's about reunion. It's about family. It's about going through a trial and going through separation and then making your way back to the people that you love. You know what I mean? So it's not that every single story is pointing toward Beth, but this is just a story they tell over and over and over again with many characters. And some of the times it's romantic and some of the times it's not. It's familial or just platonic. Um, and sometimes it's variations on it in different ways, but they tell it over and over again. And Beth and Daryl are just the biggest, like most epic and ultimate example of that template, right? And they did that because Daryl is the most popular character and they wanted his romance to be really, really epic. And so they just put it together and said, this is the one that's not going to happen in an episode or a season or even many seasons. It's going to take years. And then this is what we're going to do. So, anyway, so like I was saying, I don't think that that means that necessarily she will be returning with Sherry and Dwight. I mean, she could be, but we have seen this kind of template with uh, lots of people. We saw it with like Tyrese and Sasha, and um, we saw it with Judith making her way back to Rick, even when she was a baby, and we've seen it with Negan, and we've seen it with Maggie and Herschel, and we saw it with Maggie and Glenn before Glenn died, and we saw it with Sasha and Abraham, and we saw it with Rick and Michonne. You know what I mean? That she could return with anybody, and I don't think seeing parallels to her story with other characters necessarily justifies pointing to that, if that makes sense. Um, it's funny that you say the dark years were 5 through 7. I understand 5. I actually really enjoyed 5, even though up till Beth was shot. Obviously, I understand why that's dark. I really enjoyed season 6, and I think it's mostly because we had so much Beth symbolism there. We got Glenn's death fake out. We had the wolves. I still think the wolves were fantastic villains. They're just villains that are up my alley. I love villains like them because they're so interesting and they're so um, vague, and you can do so much with them. And I was kind of sad we got rid of them so fast. But anyway, 7 and 8 was where we got into all out war, and to me, those were just not my favorite season. So I'll give you that. Anyway, but yeah, I hope this answers your question, and it definitely could be an alternative path. I'm not saying that 100% it's not either. We just don't know. And it could be, using that particular logic could be like literally any character in the show. So I just wouldn't necessarily think that, like, claim that that was the case. But anyway, yeah, you are right about the parallels though, and that's a great catch. And yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about it. So thank you for that ask. All right, guys, I probably will not do any more videos after this until Sunday, and then we're getting actually the season finale of Dead City, so we'll see what it brings us. And yeah, we'll just go from there. Talk to you soon.